Good morning, everyone. It is Sunday, November 16th. This is Cardinal Central 365. I'm Luke Slabaugh. He's Ethan Hannaford. Glad to be with you here, the mid-stretch of November. GM meetings came and went in Las Vegas, Nevada. Ethan Hannaford, how are we feeling as the Cardinals are now jumping into this offseason in earnest?
Yeah, I think it's encouraging to see that the Cardinals look to be setting up to be one of the more active teams in this offseason. I think there's a part of you as someone that's around the Cardinals that says, okay, like this is what we've been told is going to happen, but you're used to a regime that has been ran by John Mozeliak for a long time, where there were likely times where moves should have been made that weren't made, and or maybe moves that should not have been made that were made. I think that based off of what we're hearing now, there is a little bit of optimism around the fan base that, okay, things are going to get moving and Hein Bloom is truly going to get this going in the right direction. So it is interesting hearing some of the rumors afloating. Several different teams, more than several, having interest in multiple players for the Cardinals. Brendan Donovan, Sonny Gray, Nolan Arenado, Lars Nootbaar, just some of the names we're hearing, Alec Burleson. So there is plenty of different pieces that could be discussed, but, more than anything, I think just that the Cardinals are involved in so many of these conversations is encouraging in general and is going to, make for a very interesting offseason. Let me ask you a question real quick. You mentioned the GM meetings. Did you happen to see Derek Gould's post on his Twitter, his X, forgive me, about the start of the breaking ground of construction on the A's new stadium? Did you see that picture?
Have not taken a look at it this morning. Do share
So
within the copyright
I
laws.
don't know where I don't know which hotel the GM meetings took place in. Right next to New York, New York. It may have been in New York, New York, but it was right next to New York, New York, and I saw the MGM as well. And there, is just a full-on construction site right there on the corner of the strip. And I guess I just didn't connect. I knew that they had broken ground on it, but I just didn't realize that it was legitimately underway and that process was moving forward. So we'll see how long it takes for the A's to end up, with a new stadium. But Derek Gould posted that the other day, and it was to my surprise.
All this dude does is retweet stuff. I'm not going through this. Okay, we got a lot to talk about today. I was gonna say this thing's a mess. This thing's a college dorm room. Okay, news today or over the weekend. Chandler Rome of the Athletic reports that the Houston Astros want in on Brendan Donovan. They are kicking the tires and are one of the several teams that you mentioned that could be a fit for Brendan Donovan. Donovan is a super utility player. He's an all-star. He hits to contact. He can play outfield, second base. And for the Astros, there's clearly a fit here. They tend to skew right handed. They have an aging second baseman in Jose Altuve. How can a trade materialize, Ethan Hannaford, and make sense between these two clubs?
Yeah, the Astros are an interesting piece. We know that the Cardinals and Houston's front offices have some familiarity with each other because they worked hand in hand a lot last offseason trying to make a trade work for Nolan Arenado. Of course, Arenado, put his no trade clause into use and ended up remaining in St. Louis in the 2025 season. But there was a lot of back and forth negotiation during that process leading up to the eventual trade being accepted by the teams. So you have familiarity with the front offices, which is always a start. You'd be surprised. There is that is not a guarantee with all 30 ball clubs. Just look at the history the Cardinals have of who they have traded with over the past 10, 15 years. When you look specifically at the Houston Astros, there are definitely some holes that they would like to be filling. Jose Altuve was moved from second base to left field last year because of his struggles defensively at second base. We know that Houston tends to be an easier ballpark to play left field in because of the Crawford boxes. There is much less space in that left field area. So they took a risk putting Altuve out there. He was okay. He had some blunders, but it was okay. Um, the big thing with them is they have some money that they're probably going to want to be coming off of the books. And Brendan Donovan is a replacement piece that would make a lot of sense and would be a cheaper option. I'm sure a lot of teams are looking at it like that. But right now, with the acquisition of Carlos Correa last year, now you're trying to figure out what position makes the most sense for Isaac Paredes, who was their third baseman prior to that. But now it's Correa at third. But you also have Christian Walker, who the Astros signed to that 3-year, $60 million deal last offseason. And they signed him once the Astros couldn't get a deal done or once I should say, Arenado declined to be traded to Houston. That is when they signed Christian Walker. He underwhelmed in their eyes for what they were paying for him. Finished up with an OPS, quite literally a tick under 800. He was dealing with some oblique issues. So, whether you can get 20 million whether you can get someone to cover a contract that is due $40 million over the next 2 years, it is a question mark. Paredes is expected to make around $9 million in arbitration this year. So there's talk that there is a world in which the Astros would like to offload one of those two contracts. It seems like Christian Walker is the one that there is more of an open door for. At this time of year, Mozeliak was always good at this, but maybe he was even a little more blunt than some general managers were. But it's a time of year where you're kind of trying to figure out on the messaging. One moment a general manager is willing to open up and share, the next everything is closed off, and then sometimes they're dropping subtle hints. And what I took from some of the comments that I have been reading is that Isaac Paredes, it's not looking very likely that he is going to be a guy that gets traded. However, Christian Walker is a name that they did not say was off the board, that there was no chance that they're trading him. So somewhere they're going to have to open up some cap space to be able to bring in. They're gonna have to open up some cap space to be able to add to the pitching market. I say cap space like there's a cap in baseball. Yikes. Maybe eventually.
Luxury tax space.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So right now, where the Astros are at is they are looking for perhaps a more affordable option to where they're not taking a huge drop off on their infield, but also it's a guy that can play the outfield. He can play left field. He has plenty of experience out there in Brendan Donovan. It seems like a fit that would make sense on Houston's side. Now, the question is, can they, provide pieces that are intriguing enough to the Cardinals in return for what is to be, you have to imagine, their most valuable piece that is on the trade block per se. That's where the question is going to come in, is what are the offers that Houston is willing to throw out there going to be compared to what some of the other teams around the league are. It most certainly makes sense for Houston in the sense of, they need to clear out some money, and Brendan Donovan is a cheaper option that's going to keep them competitive both offensively and defensively with his abilities.
And he's got the abilities for sure. You mentioned trade pieces that could make sense between the Cardinals and the Astros, and we've got teams that are in different spots. The Astros just narrowly missed the postseason in 2025. The Cardinals are in this retooling, short cycle, trying to get back to a contention window, but not concede anything. And so the question is now, what can the Astros offer that makes sense for the Cardinals in the short term, but also perhaps the long term? And I have a couple of options here as my phone continues to go off here. There was another report from The Athletic that kind of dovetails with Chandler Rome's. This one from Matt Gelb that says an intriguing name on the trade market from the Astros could be center field center fielder Jake Myers, who might be squeezed out of the outfield picture in Houston. He does not hit for power. However, he is a plus defender, and he's coming off an 104 game season in which he hit 290. Plus defender, he is arbitration eligible. He has the same amount of service time as Brendan Donovan. He is seen as the compensation for those who do not sign Cody Bellinger or Harrison Bader. You'll remember last week I floated out the idea that the Cardinals, why not try to get Harrison Bader on a 1 to 2 year prove it deal and then flip him if it doesn't work out in the context of a rebuild? And the comments said, do not do that. So I feel like that could be an interesting fit. One outfielder, quote unquote, for another, both arbitration eligible, both with the same amount of service time and hitting free agency at the same time. And there are certainly prospects we can look at in the Houston Astros system as well. However, I had to do as much research as I could on contextually where does Brendan Donovan fit? Like, what is the value? And I'll float that Jake Myers scenario to you right now. I'll get your thoughts on it, and then in a second, I want to double back on maybe some comparisons historically what Brendan Donovan could get in a trade.
Yeah, so I mean, the thing with Brendan Donovan is what makes him so appealing is not only his ability to play all around the diamond, his ability to hit in large part for contact, right? But he has the ability to show some pop as well. But in large part, it's because he brings all that attached with the 2 years of control. And guys and markets look at that, teams look at that, and their eyes light up because they're seeing a guy that is going to be able to provide things that a lot of free, big time free agents would be able to do, but for a fraction of the cost. So, the question comes down to, what makes sense for the Cardinals. You mentioned the Jake Myers trade. And, I know we talked, I think it was last week even, about the question marks in center field for the Cardinals. What does the future for Victor Scott look like there? I think the Cardinals are probably a little bit higher on Victor Scott than you are, Luke. So I would be surprised if that is the direction that they go. I don't know if it necessarily. I mean, how much of a win is that trade wise for the Cardinals moving on from Donovan, a guy that I would argue is more talented, more valuable, in bringing back Jake Myers. Now, there could be, lower level prospects attached with that. If I'm the Cardinals, I'm looking at someone, this is obviously the one for every single team in Major League Baseball. Much easier to get it than, or much easier to want it than to get it. But I'm looking at young, controllable pitching, and I don't know how I don't know. We don't know what the market's going to look like in the sense of, can Brendan Donovan get you a young, controllable starting pitcher? Probably not. But could he get you a guy that's in AA, AAA that is a, top, maybe pushing top 5 prospect in an organization? Maybe. Like I said, it's not a slam dunk. I don't know for sure. But I think the Cardinals going in a direction like that makes a little bit more sense at this point than going after a guy like Jake Myers. That's just my personal opinion. And it's also taking into consideration that I think that the organization values Victor Scott a little bit higher than you are saying.
You mentioned that the Cardinals should have a higher opinion on Victor Scott than I do. I hope that's the case for all their players. Otherwise, what are we doing here? Because I don't work for the Cardinals. If the Cardinals are not as high on Tink Hence as I am, what are we doing? John Patrick Van Pelt comments, do the Cardinals need someone like Fernando Tatis Jr.? My answer to this question, the Cardinals need Fernando Tatis Jr. They also need Chan-Ho Park Jr. That is my final answer. Get the reference. If you don't, I don't know what to tell you. All right, Missouri, get ready. We're talking about DraftKings again for the umpteenth time and Ethan Hannaford's gambling with DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app. It's coming soon. New Missouri customers, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, and when they go live, place just a $5 bet to unlock $300 in bonus bets starting November 17th. That is tomorrow. That is a Monday. You can create your DraftKings Sportsbook account in Missouri. Get ready for launch day on December 1. DraftKings Sportsbook brings everything you need to elevate your game day, including live in-game betting, lightning fast payouts, and endless ways to get in on the action, all right from your phone. And when they go live in Missouri, you'll be betting with the Sportsbook app trusted by millions, safe, secure, and with fast money withdrawals. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Grab $300 in bonus bets with just a $5 bet when they go live December 1 in partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. Where'd that jingle go? Where's my gambling problem? There
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 21 and over. Physically present in Missouri. Eligibility restrictions apply. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Excludes customers who redeem pre-launch sign-up offer. Terms at sportsbook.draftkings.com/promos.
I was running the Mizzou chat last night. It was like herding cats. We had 5 people on at once. Couldn't even fit Vic Faust's forehead into the stream. It was wild. So we're talking about a potential Brendan Donovan fit with the Houston Astros. Did some research on Baseball Reference looking for a comparison score. Who profiles as a similar hitter to Brendan Donovan through his age 28 season? And the name that came up was a former Houston Astro himself, Mike Lamb. Cardinal fans should be familiar with Mike Lamb, given his heroics in the 2005 NLCS, Astros versus Cardinals, back when they were division rivals. Game 3 at Minute Maid Park, former Enron Field. Mike Lamb hit a double and home run against Matt Morris, the right-hander, in his final Cardinals campaign in a 4-3 win over the Cardinals. And early in his career, Lamb was more a corner infielder type of player. He is not the utility man. He does not have the defensive prowess that Brendan Donovan does. However, when he was traded from Texas to New York, the Yankees, then to Houston, the return was a young right-hander named Juan De Leon. Reliever in high A ball, never made it past there. However, he was pitching well. I think there was I don't know how his career stalled out, to be quite honest, but he ended up going to Japan, played for a cup of coffee with the Fukuoka SoftBank Hawks in 2011, and that was that. But I think when it comes to Brendan Donovan, you could push the envelope and try to get a top 10 organizational prospect. My eyes are set on the number 7 prospect in the Astro system, a right-hander from Venezuela named Anderson Brito. Signed for $10,000 out of Venezuela, works mid-90s, touched 99 this year. He's known for his easy delivery, strikeout guy with a 60-grade fastball. The only flaw, or the only pushback, is that he stands around 5'10 and 155. Could be a mid-rotation starter if he fills out and works his way up the system, or he could be a high-leverage reliever, not unlike a Jojo Romero type. That's not a great comparison, just given one's a righty, one's a lefty, and they have different arsenals, but just thinking of how he could fit into a Cardinals bullpen in 2027, 2028. That is something that a deal that maybe pairs a Jake Myers with an Anderson Brito. You're talking about that for Brendan Donovan. You have the short-term stopgap in center field, which I insist the Cardinals need in 2026. They do need an everyday option out there. And then a pitching prospect, a right-hander with some zip that they can dream on. That is my proposition to you, Ethan Hannaford.
Yeah, I think that's a intriguing offer. Brito definitely, the numbers have been good. They were good in his rookie season, and they were good again last year in high A ball. So we'll see if he is set to make the jump to Double A this upcoming year. So he's definitely an interesting option. Definitely not against it. And yeah, like I said, a lot of the Jake Myers talk is going to go back to where the Cardinals think that Victor Scott is. We know what we saw on the field this year. What kind of corrections, adjustments is he able to make offensively during the offseason? And what does he look like going into, February, March, and once camp comes around? That's going to be something to keep an eye on. As far as the Mike Lamb comps, here's why Brendan Donovan far clears that. He's got the hair. And as a result, I have to clear him miles ahead of Mike Lamb.
Gotcha. A name tossed out by Verilis Gwynn in the chat is Spencer Arrighetti. And I do remember watching him pitch this year. I was on an East Coast show for most of the year. Um, and I'm trying to think because they got him in a trade, but he was hurt, I want to say. That's a major
Mm,
league ready starter. TCU kid, I guess went to Louisiana. He is now 25,
yeah,
fixing to turn 26 on January 2nd. I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all.
let's see. I don't either, but it's young controllable pitching. I mean, how likely are you to be able to get some get that in return? That's going to be the question. Everyone can say, "Oh yeah, well I want this guy and I want that guy." Um, Young controllable pitching is the most valuable thing that a team can have in Major League Baseball. It is by far the most valuable thing. So, what are the Astros willing to give in order to get a guy like Brendan Donovan? I would love to get a guy like Spencer Arrighetti, whose numbers have been uh, have been okay so far throughout his major league career. I mean, he's had flashes. It's been a short major league stint, but if that's a guy that the Cardinals think could plug into the rotation, they certainly need to plug in some spots. Like you said, he's young and controllable. Could be an interesting option.
Okay, my correction on that. He was drafted by the Astros. He missed, I think, the rest of this season with elbow inflammation. I saw him pitch against the Orioles, and he did okay, taking the loss in that game. But uh, yeah, 6'2".
Ended up
I can
ended
get
up
behind
with
this.
a
Really,
he only started 7 games this year, 35 innings, an ERA in the mid fives. It's hard to really get an idea off of 7 starts what a guy is. So you're probably looking more so at his stuff more than his brief stint in the majors. There's been some good, some bad during his minor league career. So we'll have to see what exactly that looks like come as we get deeper into the offseason.
I'm getting some White Sox fans in the chat right now. Grant Taylor, LSU former right-hander. You want to talk about controllable pitching? He's not a free agent until 2032.
That is indeed
When that
controllable.
name popped up in the chat, I thought it was some abstract reference or some NPC character. But no, I mean listen, you mentioned that controllable pitching is an asset, and I mean Brendan Donovan still by like definition is controllable. $5 million salary in 2026 is not going to give the DeWitts a heart attack or give Hein Bloom a heart attack. You don't have to trade him. And I always kind of get a little bit of an ick when we talk about trading someone who's been integral to the Cardinals and been so reliable the last couple of years in Brendan Donovan. So you don't have to trade him unless you have an offer that makes sense in the interim and in the long term. And my rebuttal to all this is like, if you did trade Donovan for Jake Myers and a prospect, let's just say that the Astros want to do that. You're not married to Jake Myers in the same way that you're not married to Brendan Donovan. You have him for another couple of years, but if it doesn't work out, or if he outperforms the team's performance, you can continue to parlay that into prospects in this retooling. So, um, uh, Robert Johnson is pushing back on this, and I feel like we're at an impasse. Thinks that you got to find out Victor Scott's value. I guess he evolves from Victor Scott the second to Victor Scott the third. Do not remember seeing Victor Scott one, but I think that's I feel like the runway is not infinite here. Interesting. Okay. Getting reports that the sound is wonky. I do apologize. Final thoughts, Ethan Hannaford. We're going to button this up in a couple of minutes, but it seems like we've reached an impasse on the Brendan Donovan conversation. Where do you stand on it today?
It is hard to let go of a guy like Donnie because he is so impactful for this Cardinals team in so many different ways, both on and off the field. But unfortunately, it's just where the Cardinals are at right now, and it feels like the time for St. Louis to make something happen with him because, of the value that he carries around the league. So at this point, I feel like it's inevitable that Brendan Donovan needs to get traded, that he is going to get traded, not only to be able to get return and maximize his value league-wide, but also to open up opportunities for, JJ Weatherholt is going to be here in 2026. Where's Nolan Arenado going to be? What does that open up? Who's going to be playing on the infield for you? There's going to be some spots that need to open up. So there's a little more clarity on who your guys are. Clear out that log jam. And while, you hate the thought of Brendan Donovan being a part of the log jam, because, he's the guy. He was the all-star last year. He was the head honcho offensively, right? Attached with Alec Burleson. Unfortunately, it makes too much sense to trade him at this point, and I'd be really surprised if he was on the Cardinals roster come the 2026 season.
I'm trying to think of the last time that the Cardinals and Astros made a trade. Was it Tyler Green? I
don't remember anything since.
It's fascinating. There was a website that was like it archives the Cardinals trades history of Cardinals. It's not super current. Like it doesn't have the Quintana trade to the Pirates a couple of years ago, or God, what was it? Oviedo to the Pirates. So
I'm not seeing anything as of recent that's coming up. So it may very well be that.
You got a chance to make history.
History.
All right, and that's what we're all about here. We go down in history for another Sunday. This is Card Central 365. Hope you guys are having a good mid-November. Of course, the comment section has been great as always. This is STL Sports Central content every day. Card Central 365, Character Show, The Bernie Show, Domesticated Gamblers with Eric Sontag. That's a show that we have. And many more post-game shows, Blues, Mizzou, Illini, sometimes in vertical mode. All that here on STL Sports Central. He's Ethan Hannaford. I'm Luke Slabaugh. I want to say thank you for going down in history with us one more time on STL Sports Central, presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Have a good day.